about as tough as it gets for a wrestler. Wrestling from the bottom position can be like that, so the objective is to avoid or escape that position as much as possible. Escapes are achieved through effective hip heights and hand control. Because of the highly vulnerable nature of the position from a mechanical standpoint, correct choice and execution of the technique is essential. It might surprise you to know that the hip heist has much in common with breakdancing. Compare the movement of this dancer and this wrestler. Unfortunately, practicing in the bottom position isn't quite as much fun as dancing. Being at a disadvantage, the wrestler has to work harder and be mentally tough to succeed from this position. In this tape, we'll show you how to establish a solid base, perform ankle, leg, and hip moves, and use hand fighting techniques and bridges to get from the bottom to a neutral or advantageous position. Practice these skills correctly and repeatedly, and you'll spend a lot less time in the bottom and much more time on the victory stand. We're fortunate to have a couple great wrestlers with me today on this video. Bill Zadig, formerly of Montana, prep champion and NCAA champion at the University of Iowa. And Mark Ironside, former Cedar Rapids prep champion and a couple-time NCAA champion. A very important element of the down position is the base position here. Very similar to standing wrestling in the stance. Without a good stance, you will not be that good on your feet. Without a good base, you will have difficulty in the bottom position. This base position drill is one where the top man attacks the bottom man to try to knock him off his base. He reacts to keep his knees underneath him and fights to keep that good base. Top man should get very physical during this drill to make sure that the bottom man learns to move his knees to react appropriately, and his arms. A solid base will help determine how good you are in the bottom position. To make this drill effective, the top man must be very active. The bottom man must keep his base wide, his knees underneath him, to make sure he doesn't get knocked over. This is one position coaches do not like athletes to be in interscholastic wrestling. That's in the prone base position. We want them in the base building position. So what we do is we teach them how to go from their belly to their base, even though we never want them on their belly. What he does here is he brings his elbows in and his hands out so he doesn't get near wristed, and he brings a leg up to the side, and he'll rotate over this hip here to his base. There's really no lifting involved, only rotation of the hip. A couple more times there, Bill. Real simple rotation, pushing back into the opponent. Now, what happens, we bring in a partner in here, Mark comes in, he lays on him, and he has a free leg there, and he brings that leg up, rotates it over that hip. Does that a couple times here, learn that base position. And then to show and give him confidence in the down position, I had a little weight on there. Former coach Nichols used to lay down and have Chris Taylor on top of him, and he would show this drill. Chris Taylor weighed 450 pounds. Go ahead, build your base. One more time, pretty easy. You could probably put 2 or 3 more guys on here. I think Bill could come up. Anyway, there's no reason to ever be in that down position if you learn this drill. My former high school coach, Bob Siddons, used to emphasize the base position. It's a reaction drill that is so important for the down position. I put Bill here in a position on the bottom that he has to get back to his base position. So basically we go from flat on the mat, ready, hit it, back to your base. Right side, hit it, back to your base. Left side, hit it, back to your base, on your back. Hit it, back to your base. We also incorporate that drill, besides the base, we also go into the standing position. So this time we'll do the same thing. We'll go back to our base, but then to a standing position. Ready? Flat on the mat. Ready? Base. Stand up. Right back down. Right side. Base. Stand up. Right back down. Left side. Base. Stand up. Right back down. Back. Base. Stand up. Right back down. My former high school coach, Bob Siddons, incorporated this drill before practice, during practice, after practice. He used it for warm-ups and conditioning. But mostly, he wanted us to be good in a lot of positions from the mat, whether it be on our belly, on our side, or on our back. Even though your opponent has a lot of weight on you, hand control and explosive moves like the hip heist can clear the action. A key essential in the bottom position is a term called the hip heist. It's a skill and a drill. The bottom man basically is learning his movement, just like you previously saw in breakdancing, the fact that he's going to move his hips up, move his legs under and his arms over, and he's not going to move very much laterally. Okay, when I tell Bill here to have leg under, he raises his hips up, goes a leg under, and an arm comes over. Leg under, arm comes over. One at a time. Leg under, arm over. Leg under, arm over. Now, the same position started here. It could start on the rear end, on his rear end here. He's up, leg under, arm over. Leg under, arm over. And during this process, he could accidentally hit down, but he's got to bounce right up. It's a very important process, hitting the mat and bouncing back up. Let's put it together now. Leg under, arm over. Ready? Hit it. Arms must stay in while he's doing this to keep his base underneath him. Keeps compact instead of elongated. Hip heisting is a good warm-up drill. It's also a good conditioning drill at the end of practices. Now that we've learned good hip heist technique, we're going to incorporate it into actual escapes and reversals. The first is the stand-up and the hip heist. Again, stand-up, hand control, and the hip heist. Notice how the hips fly through the air. This stand-up to good hand control allows for the athlete to lower his hips and hip heist out. Chad Zapital, All-American, uses a good stand-up hand control to maneuver out of this position. The second would be the sit-out, back into him, and the hip heist. The sit-out, clearing the arms, and getting the hip high, coming through. Pushing back in with hand control allows for a hip down and then an explosive hip heist for an escape. World and Olympic champion Tom Brands controls the hips and gets 1 point for an escape. The third would be the switch, leading with the arm and hip heisting for the escape, 1 point. The switch, clearing the hips and hip heisting through. This switch hip heist action results in a 1 point escape. Here the switch hip heist comes around for 2. Next would be the roll, hanging on, turning all the way through. This time, hesitate before you hit your hip heist. Hip roll, weight back into them, hip heist through. Sagging one's hips into your opponent is a key.
Former NCAA champion Dale Barr pinned his way to a national title with the hip roll.
And lastly, from the Granby roll, pushing back in from the set out position, hip heisting over, out of there. The Granby roll utilizing a high hip heist, hand controlling, escape or reverse.
A good Granby is like a heavy boulder, impossible to stop. There are a lot of good options off the hip heist, like this stand-up, like this set-out, the switch and hip heist, the hip roll can end in a fall, and of course, the powerful Granby.
Now that we've learned some basic moves and hip heists, I'm going to show you a move here that clears the hips out from underneath the top man. This is especially good in the starting position when he goes for ankles. It's called the kick out. Clears his hips and spins and builds his base. Especially good on the edge of the mat when an opponent lets up a little bit.
On the kick out, one must clear the ankles and pivot.
The last area of essentials involving the hips is whizzers. Whizzers are done from the bottom position or the standing position for counters, but here we're using a half stand-up to set up the whizzer to put Bill in the position of escaping. Hips in, escapes. Arm comes over. Half stand-up, whizzer, hip in, hip heist out.
The whizzer involves head up, hip in, and a set out.
This time Mark will defense the whizzer by stepping over the ankle. Now Bill has to clear the ankle by hipping in, sliding the ankle out, and coming out. Half stand up, whizzer, hook the ankle, hip, clear an ankle and out. He whizzers in, clears the ankle, and hip heists out.
When the opponent hooks the ankle off a whizzer, the hip must come in and elevate the leg to get your escape.
Right now we're going to clear the ankle like we did off the whizzer. We're going to show a drill here that gives the bottom man a chance to learn this clearing skill easily. Mark rotates each time, hooking an ankle, pushing in, slapping that foot out. Bumping with the hips, posting with the foot. Bumping with the hips, posting with the foot. Bumping with the hips, posting with the foot. That makes the foot slide out at an angle.
Clearing ankles involves hipping in and sliding the ankle and slapping the mat. The drill involves the top man to rotate to each side, clearing the ankle and slapping the mat.
Another essential skill and drill technique is posting the ankles. A common mistake is made in high school and youth wrestling is when the top man grabs the outside ankle, he tries to bring the leg forward, it just does not move forward there. Instead, you should be rotating your hip back into him, posting the hand, and hip heisting out. One more time. Instead of pulling the ankle forward, you should be putting your foot on the mat, posting the hand, and hip heisting out. A good drill from there is simply alternating back and forth, posting the ankle to the mat. Posting the ankle to the mat by reaching back, pushing the hand down, and firmly holding instead of going forward.
The ankle post technique involves pushing back into your opponent and trapping his hand. The drill involves the opponent jumping from side to side. very important not to try to pick up the ankle and bring it forward. It's more important to put the foot on the mat.
This next series involves the hands, wrists, and arms, and what they'll do to clear the top man, to make him go over the arms so the bottom man can escape. What we have here is hand fighting from the sit-out position. The bottom wrestler will be executing a drill to get the top wrestler over his arms. He's digging with his elbows and pushing with his hands to try to get him over both arms. At the same time, I'm going to have him go a little bit more realistic, where they actually try to control the situation. Bill has his arms down, across, elbows in, getting Mark over top his arms to be able to go from here to what I call a hip heist position and escaping.
This hand fighting drill involves keeping your hips directly underneath, at the same time your elbows to the inside, and if needed, a hand to post by. When the opponent gets over your arms, you usually can escape. This live footage shows Terry Brand's hip heisting out with good hand control.
What we have here will be a drill for the head post and hand fighting position. Mark drives Bill forward onto his head. Bill starts digging inside to get Mark over top of him. He'll do it 3 or 4 times here. Clearing the arms, getting the top man over top. Once he gets him over top, he does a little short set, scoot, and ends up coming out.
This same arm clearing drill from another angle.
The next drills involve the near wrist position and the clearing and swimming out of this near wrist. Mark will attack Bill on the near wrist position, and Bill will prevent the near wrist on the first drill.
Clearing the arm before a deep near wrist gets in is important.
The second drill, he will actually swim out of the near wrist once he attains it. He elongates his arm to make sure that arm swims forward.
Before the near wrist gets tight, swim the arm out.
Thirdly, he will take it out once it's tight by turning in and swimming out. He straightens his arm out for power in this particular drill.
When clearing tight wrists, it's important to have strong wrists. At the same time, rotate your hips and swim out. Rope climbing can help build that power.
And lastly, he has it tight and turns away facing the outside. He has to swim out with both arms on this last drill. If you don't swim out with both arms, it's a possibility of getting hip tilted there.
A tight near wrist rider can not only ride, but he can also lure to pin. One must be ready to do battle with a guy in this advantaged position.
This next drill involves armbar clearing. Mark will attain an armbar, Bill will limp the arm out by pushing back in, creating a space, and swimming forward. This also can be done on the mat. Comes back in with his hip, swims out. Very important to limp that arm out.
Clearing arm bars involves jolting back in and limping the arm through. From the mat, it's the same process. Jolting back in, limping out.
A final drill for the hands, arms, and wrists is a stand-up situation, breaking the opponent's grip. Pops the hip, hangs onto the hand, and hip heists out. Normally, the top man should not be able to get his hands locked. However, because he got his hands locked, we have to pop the hip to break the grip and hang onto the hand all the way through the escape.
Good hand control will prevent the top man from lifting one in the air. Good hand control and the lowering of one's level results in the escape. Olympic champion Tom Brands shows good examples of keeping legs out and as well clearing ankles and going for a reversal and getting one.
Now we're going to focus on defending the legs from the bottom position. We will do several drills that will keep and clear the legs out. This first drill involves the ankle and shin lifting drill. The hips are back, Bill pivots, Mark offing. With the knee in first, now he attacks with the ankle. Simply pivoting and lifting and clearing and getting the escape. A reversal situation here is highly likely.
Clearing a shin or an opponent's ankle is very effective. If the opponent gets the leg in, it can be very tight. You can usually result in an escape or possibly a reverse.
This next technique and drill involves clearing the leg once it's in with a high leg over drill. The opponent has the leg in, Bill sets him on his hip, high legs up and over, and ends up in a pinning situation. The leg's in, high legs over, and gets the reversal.
Pushing in with the hips and clearing your hips by doing a high leg over maneuver can be very effective for a reversal or even a pin.
A variation of this drill is the crab ride counter high leg over technique. Bill comes up out of his lap, puts the weight over his diaphragm, and goes perpendicular and ends up in a reversal or pinning situation. Very important not to set on your butt here. It's important to get up, off, and over. A good drill for conditioning and clearing legs is the army crawl drill. Here Bill swivels his hips across the mat. A technique using the army crawl is clearing the legs by pushing the leg and crawling forward and building a base. Mark has the leg in tight, Bill pushes back, army crawls forward and builds his base.
Pushing the opponent's leg backwards, crawling forward, getting your knee out will help build your base and come to a neutral position.
The final technique involves clearing the legs when they're both in from the bottom position. Bill simply lifts his leg up over and comes to the inside. And then he'll bring the other one up over and comes to the inside. Then he builds a base by pushing back in. Both legs are in, he clears to the inside, he clears to the inside, then he builds his base.
Clearing both legs involves elevating and coming to the inside and doing the same thing with the other leg. Elevating and coming to the inside and then going right into your base building and then your hand fighting position for an escape.
30 seconds, 30.
There's good action of trying to clear, actually clearing legs, building a base once you're on the mat, and then going for your escape when the opponent is over your arms.
final area from the bottom position is important for obvious reasons. It involves bridging and breaking pinholds. Basic bridging drills that are important from the bottom position are the kipping drill. Here Bill leads with his legs as he kips over back and forth. The other drill is a rotating drill that he rotates his legs around facing one direction at all times.
These bridging drills involving kipping and rotating are very important in wrestling. They increase the flexibility and the strength of the wrestler. One uses his neck in wrestling positions many times during a wrestling match.
Coming off your back involves bridging and inside arm control before you build your base. Here, Bill pushes in with a bridge, comes through with the inside arm, and builds his base. Pushes in, bridges, inside arm control, builds his base.
Bridging loosens the inside position for your arm to come through and build a base.
Preventing the cradle from the base position involves basing out and snapping the grip.
Quickness is very important in breaking the grip.
The final area involving bridging and breaking pinholes involves the headlock position. A common mistake is when the bottom man keeps his hips too far away from the top man and tries to roll through, basically pinning himself. One more time. Rolls through, basically pins himself. He should be crawling into his opponent, getting his hips under and rolling through to come out on top. The hips must become parallel or part of his opponent. He has his feet underneath him and he rolls him through with no weight.
Bridging through can be very easily done if executed properly.
The last bridge situation here off the headlock would be to crawl in and push in and come up on top, pulling the bottom arm out as you bridge up on top. Hips in, comes up on top.
Pulling the bottom arm out is the key. Crawling in and putting the hips way under makes for an easy bridge. Or pushing in and coming out on top can also be worth two.
There you have it, the key essentials for bottom wrestling. No more excuses. Cut the time you spend underneath with a tough attitude and great techniques like hip heisting and hand control. Work on these moves and you'll come out on top. Top position was my favorite and most dominant position when I wrestled. It's also the position that good wrestlers find themselves in most often. Being on top is the bonus you get from all the hard work performed in the standing and bottom positions. This is where points are scored and pins are made. Wrestling on top is similar to what a rodeo cowboy must do to stay on a bronc. Jamming with the hands to maintain the flow of movement or control he wants, or catching, turning, and roping a stubborn steer. If wrestlers practice the jamming, turning, and finishing maneuvers as they should, we would see many more pins in wrestling today. The techniques and drills covered in this tape will give you a solid foundation of moves from which to select in seizing upon an opponent's miscue or initiating the action to score and perhaps pin the opponent.
practice to win. Be an aggressive and smart wrestler on top, like a great rodeo cowboy, and be a champion.
We're fortunate to have a couple great wrestlers with me today on this video. Bill Zadig, formerly of Montana, prep champion and NCAA champion at the University of Iowa. And Mark Ironside, former Cedar Rapids prep champion and a couple-time NCAA champion.
Two-time world champion Terry Brands picks up the ankle, uses the jam drill, controls the arms, and when his opponent actually builds a base and gets back to his feet, he brings him back to the mat.
The jam technique opens up a lot of opportunities for the top man on the bottom man. Basically puts him forward, with the top man now available to grab an ankle here, grab an ankle. He's able to grab an ankle and leg attack. He's able to hook an ankle. He's able to put a leg in. He's able to tight waist and chop. Or he's able to near wrist. The first drill we'll use in the jam and flow action is the simple jamming action technique, where the top man continually hammers on the bottom man with his hips and arms, knocking him out of position. Repeated hip movement until he gains control. Hip, hip, hip.
Bill here uses repeated hip thrusts to drive his opponent to the mat.
The next drill is the jam and flow drill. Basically, it's a riding drill where the top man stays behind the bottom man's arms when he switches, when he sets out, when he rolls. It's just a good drill to make sure that you keep with the flow of the bottom man. Takes a lot of conditioning, and it also teaches one a lot of balance from the top position.
The bottom man initiates all the action here, while the top man simply stays behind the arms, keeps the weight in, and follows behind to make sure that he's doing a good job of riding.
The next drill off the jam and flow is the lifting drill when the bottom man hits a stand-up. Initially, I just want to show how he gets control of the hips by lifting in and pulling back. Next, he will do his regular stand-up, and he will do the lifting drill, controlling those hips, but not stopping, but lifting, taking him back to the mat. Mark will continue to come back up, picks him up, puts him back down. Comes back up, picks him up, puts him down. Picks him up, puts him down. Every time he's coming up, he picks him right back up, and hopefully one of the times when he hits, he just breaks and falls flat.
The bottom wrestler will initiate this drill through a stand-up. The top man hips in and returns him to the mat. It's very important to get the hands locked around the hips and to use the hips to pop the opponent off the mat and safely return them to the mat each time. It's a continuous effort by both men for this drill to be successful.
The next drill is a circle drill off the jam and set out. Bill pushes in, circles 360, one way, circles 360 the other way, and then he goes to a position of control.
This top man circle drill helps the top man keep his weight and movement on the bottom man.
The next drill is the jam and switch drill. It's a flow drill where the top man extends his leg on the switching action. They keep coming back each time to a switch, extends his leg, and flows behind him. Switch, flow. Switch, lift the leg and flow. Switch, lift the leg and flow behind. Eventually, he'll end up going to a controlled position.
This switch and flow drill allows the top man to come out of a switch even after the bottom man has an arm in. simply does this by lifting the leg and following around behind.
This drill involves the jam and Granby posting action by the top man. He comes around, staying ahead of the Granby man to make sure that he's in a position of control and flow. Mark pulls his arms out, counters the Granby by posting by the shoulder, comes up on top each time.
The top man must set himself in motion as he pulls the arm out around the waist to make sure he's ahead of the Granby man in behind the hips and arms.
Another variation of the jam and Granby is the tuck and roll drill. The bottom man Granby's, top man tucks his head and rolls through, hip to hip, staying right even with the bottom Granby man. If he falls off to the side, he will end up in a bad Granby situation of a near fall situation.
The top wrestler stays hip to hip, doesn't get his arms in too deep, posts his head as well to stay in good position. If he doesn't, if he falls off his hips, he ends up on his side and in trouble.
The final drill on the jam and flow techniques is the jump across drill. You can see here the top man has to stop the roll by jumping across. He actually gets flying pretty high. It's kind of like the bucking bronco in the rodeo. Top man must keep his inside leg in deep to make sure he doesn't get elevated.
This jump across drill is a great reaction drill for the top man. It teaches him to keep his hips and knees underneath him. If he doesn't, he would end up falling over to his side and of course be in a lot of trouble. Great riding drill. One of the Steiner twins jams his opponent into a position that he'll apply his legs for complete control.
We've worked with the jam and flow. Now we want to move to the jam and control. Just like in the rodeo where we rode the buck and bronco out, now we want to control that steer and put him on his back, or this partner right here and put him on his back. So we do the jamming action. That opens up the opportunity to get our control. We could near wrist on this side here. We could come in with a leg. We could hook an ankle on this side. Or we could spiral. Under the jam and control, we have an action that will control the bottom man by hooking the ankles or by hooking both knees. From there we have a drill called the table drill. When the bottom man builds his base, the top man is controlling the ankles or the knees and knocking his table legs out to keep control during the whole process. The next area within jam and control involves the hips. Here we have the hip spiral drill. Top man sets the bottom man on his hip after the jamming action. Jams, comes back with the flow, and goes into his control off the hips.
Jamming in, sticking the inside knee at the ankle and setting your opponent into your lap repeatedly is the drill. This drill is aided by the opponent jumping back to his base and then repeated hip spiraling.
Off of the hip spiral technique, we do a breakdown that involves the far knee and the near wrist, driving him to the mat. Again, far knee, near wrist. We have a drill off this control. It's called a circle drill. It takes a guy completely 360 degrees. The bottom man's building his base. You're taking him off his base. A
key element in this drill is to keep your opponent's arm underneath his body. With the arm under, it makes the drill much easier. World and Olympic champion Tom Brands is applying the near wrist, and then he applies the circle breakdown.
From the near wrist control, we have several opportunities to lead into pinning. First one is the near wrist and the far half. The near wrist and the far half.
Jumping across and getting an angle towards the head is important here.
Second one is the near wrist, blocking the head with the leg by posting on your own head and turning the opponent's head. Posting on your head, coming up, turning the opponent's head while near wristing.
Scooping the opponent's head towards the near wrist aids the process.
The third one is arm barring the far side, along with the near wrist. Near wrist, arm bar the far side.
Jumping across and scooping at the elbow, not the shoulder, helps out.
The fourth one is near wristing, pulling it out, planting it on the top of the partner's back, and coming around and underhooking the far side while hanging on to the near wrist. Releasing it, pulling it out, hanging on to it, and underhooking the far side.
To pull the arm out, one must push in and pull out to a 90-degree angle. The far underhook is the result. Olympic and world champion Tom Brands uses control of this arm behind the back, and instead of underhooking the far side, he turns the head towards the near side to end up in a pinning situation.
The hip spiral can lead to ultimate control, which could lead to good pinning situations. The first pinning situation is the armbar head block. Notice both hands end up on the mat. Hip spiral, armbar, shoulder control, all the way to the mat.
World and Olympic champion Dave Schultz utilized this technique for many pins.
The second one, off the hip spiral control, would be a cross-face cradle situation. Hip spiral, cross-face type cradle.
Making sure you take your opponent's head to the knee is important.
Third one is in hip spiral control to over and under. Ride and control, leading to a possible pinning situation. Hip spiral, over and under, picking up, leading to possible pinning situation.
Pushing the opponent's weight forward makes the legs lift easy.
And the last one is a hip spiral, ending up in a pancake position, pull the arm through, taking the man towards his back. Hip spiral, pancake.
A couple of arm adjustments, and the bottom wrestler is on his back.
The jamming technique puts the bottom person in a vulnerable position for moves like the cradle. Here we see an outside leg cradle.
The jam puts the head and knee together.
Now we see jam and inside leg cradle. Jam and inside leg cradle.
The same here, the head and knee together.
After the initial jam, the legs can be used for a lot of control. Here Bill uses the power leg after his initial jam to come up on top and hip in for the control.
The jamming action allows the legs to come in easily. The power leg goes to complete control.
Next, after the jam, he uses a crossbody for control to pick up the far ankle and drive the opponent to the mat. Jam, crossbody, pick up the ankle, control.
The jamming action allows the leg to come in. This time, a crossbody action to leg drive for control.
From the jam and power leg in, it leads to control with the arm bars. Again, jam, power leg in, arm bar, arm bar.
The jam action allows the power leg to come in and drive the opponent down, which opens up arm bars from either side.
From the jam and power leg in, we have a good drill called the hip tilt drill from the power leg in, where we alternate back and forth, power leg to the hip tilt, power leg to the hip tilt.
This drill is a hip drill utilizing the power leg for back points. As the pressure comes down, you go into a hip tilt. This drill goes back and forth. NCAA champion Troy Steiner uses his legs and arm bars for a hip tilt for back points.
Off the initial jam with the power leg in, we go to a drill that's called the leg in, leg out drill. Very important for versatility of the use of the legs. Switching each time after the other leg gets in position of control.
The jamming action allows the power leg to come in. Switching legs in this particular position aids the top wrestler with his leg maneuvers.
The final drill in the jam and control area is the Bill Wick drill. Jamming action, power leg in, high arching, pinning situation. Chest is real high, arches up. It leads to a good pinning control situation.
The jamming action allows the heel to be burned in. Two-time NCAA champion Bill Wick utilized this position for many pins in his wrestling. You can use it for drills or for your actual wrestling. In real competition, that leg in, armbar lift, puts a lot of pressure on that bottom athlete and usually results in back points.
Another good jam and control technique is to counter the whizzer by simply dropping back, hooking an ankle, and driving at the knees. Jamming, whizzering, dropping back, just like a single leg finish to clear the whizzer.
When the opponent puts the whizzer in, relieve the pressure by dropping down to the ankle and knee. A conventional start by Eric Aiken and Chad Zapital. Joe Williams shows the intentional release to go after another takedown.
This is the conventional start from the normal referee's position. Another referee's position that is optional is the international Olympic start. Tells the referee that he's going to start in this position. This is mostly used for intentional releases. The Olympic start with jamming action makes for good leg and ankle attacking. Olympic start, jamming action, leg and ankle attacking.
Bill shows the optional start to the referee, goes ahead and jams Mark off the whistle, opens up the legs, and he's looking for a fall situation.
From the Olympic start, we go to the jam drill, driving the opponent over to a leg and ankle attack where we go into our arm Turk to our leg Turk drill. Switching back and forth, learning this position well. Arm Turk, leg Turk. Arm Turk, not pulling the other leg out until the arm comes in, not putting the leg in until the arm comes out. Back and forth.
The optional start will lead us into a drill that we use for pinning. The leg tackle into an arm Turk as well into a leg Turk. Alternating back and forth with this particular drill gives the top man advantage to the point that he can turn the bottom man very easily. You must not remove your arm or your leg until the arm or leg is completely in position. Pinning is the ultimate in the sport of wrestling.
And now for the final segment, the finishing touches off the flow and control, the fall. The finishing touch of the half Nelson involves settling in as you drive the opponent over. You end up chest to chest for the fall. The half, driving over, settling in, driving over, settling in, the fall.
Besides ending up chest to chest, elevating the opponent's head in a near half or far half is important.
And for the finishing touches of the cradle with a shoulder trapped, involves bringing the inside knee up, straighten the elbows out, and rolling back. Inside knee comes up, straighten the elbows, rolls the shoulder down for the fall.
Sliding away to allow the near shoulder to reach the mat gets the fall.
For the finishing touch to the headlock involves a hip heist action, weight back into him, weight up off the butt, making sure that you stay perpendicular, and the fall.
Back pressure in results in a fall.
The final pinning situation is off the leg Turk, very similar to the cradles and the leg turning, where you end up with a 5 count, the shoulders up, however you arch, come back, push the shoulder down with a swivel. Again, leg Turk, driving him over, getting his 5 count, arching up in the air, pinning the shoulder, swiveling back down for the fall.
Repeated elevation and shoulder trapping allows the opponent's shoulder blade to hit the mat.
Now you have the essentials of top wrestling. From this position, you can create excitement and put points on the scoreboard. But you have to make it happen. Work on the moves and you'll come out on top.
That's a pin, guy.
He got a fall! He got a fall!
Wrestling on the feet has been one of the most basic features of our sport for centuries, from ancient Greco-Roman to modern freestyle and folk-style forms. Sumo wrestling is a great example of wrestling in a standing position. If you've tried it or watched it, you know that the biggest sumo wrestler doesn't always win. Rather, the sumo champion is the wrestler who establishes the best base, gains the greatest leverage, and attacks his opponent at the most advantageous angle. Same is true in other forms of wrestling. A good stance and setup position are required to perform the leg tackles leading to takedowns and points. In addition to being able to attack an opponent on the feet, a wrestler must also be prepared to fend off attacks and score off these attacks through a number of techniques. This tape teaches the essential setups, leg attacks, go-behinds, defensive maneuvers, and several more key moves to be a standout in a standing position. Practice the demonstrated techniques and drills correctly and repeatedly, and you'll be on your way to mastering one of the essentials to being a champion wrestler.
He's got a problem.
We're fortunate to have a couple great wrestlers with me today on this video. Bill Zadig, formerly of Montana, prep champion and NCAA champion at the University of Iowa. And Mark Ironside, former Cedar Rapids prep champion and a couple-time NCAA champion.
Stance, position, movement, faking, it's all good setups for scoring on the feet, even from a defensive position like here where we clear the arms and go around for a go-behind.
The key to all offensive skills and defensive skills in standing wrestling is one's stance. It's very important to have a comfortable stance to make sure that these skills work well. Bill's stance, he's comfortable with that. Mark's stance, he's comfortable with that. You can notice their hips are under, their legs are under them, their hands are down, their heads fairly up, but more importantly, they're using their own position to be able to feel comfortable. A European stance is one which we go up against when we go overseas, and that's more where they're bent over further at the head. A lot of times they stagger more, and they don't have their hips under as much. They don't do as much motion as we do. They have their arms out sometimes a little bit further, have a little bit distance. And sometimes we have trouble because of this particular stance. Greco-Roman stance is more upright. They're using their hips. Of course, you cannot attack the lower body, and so that's why you can bring your legs right in there. We have a stance and motion drill here where Bill's circling, he's reaching down, he's stalking, he's backing up, he's body faking, keeping his arms down, head in good position, circling back and forth. This drill's great at the beginning of practice. It's great at the end when you're tired. Great to put yourself in a lot of positions. A lot of body faking. Bill's doing a stance drill. He's combining it with a knockout, and he's circling up. Knockout is basically preventing the opponent from scoring, keeping him off your legs. He also incorporates that with hip heisting. As he knocks out, he hits a couple of hip heists, one or two, and circles up. Throws his legs back, hip heists, and circles up.
A good stance with fakes in motion opens up numerous offensive scoring opportunities, as well as limiting your opponent's scoring attempts. A good pummeler makes scoring look easy from the standing position. Here is a drill for pummeling that incorporates speed, power, and motion.
Speed. Power. Speed and power, motion. Straight on. Ready, hit it.
This sumo drill teaches you to control your opponent. Control allows for many opportunities to score with offensive maneuvers. The objective of the drill is to move your opponent out of the 10-foot circle or simply snap them to the mat. A good tie can create snapping and go-behind opportunities.
Ties and snaps and go-behinds all go together. Bill here will be doing different ties, and then he'll go to snaps, and then he'll finish up with go-behinds. Starts out with a collar inside tie, pushing, snapping, going behind.
A strong push-pull action will set your opponent on their nose.
We go to an underhook and wrist. Here's the underhook. Wrist pushes in, reaches up to the head, snaps, go behind.
Short penetration with your tie arm is important from an offensive and defensive point of view.
Goes into a front headlock tie. Here and here, pushes in, snaps, go behind.
A tight elbow is very important here to make sure you eliminate any scoring opportunities again from your opponent's point of view.
Now we go into a 2-on-1 tie. There's two arms on one arm, pushes in, snaps, go behind.
When using the 2-on-1 tie, keep a good angle to keep your opponent off your legs.
And lastly, the double inside tie, pushing, snapping, and going behind.
The inside tie position is the most commonly used of the ties. Snap drills are good drills to use when an opponent is pushing in hard. If he's not pushing in hard, you push first and then you snap. These are done on the feet, snapping to the mat, keeping good hand control, or they're done on the mat as well. On the mat, just like on the feet, you can incorporate good go-behinds. The go-behind circle drill is one we use in our practices daily. It puts fear in your opponent's offense and allows you to concentrate on your own offense.
The biggest mistake made on a go-behind is when you only put a little bit of weight on the near arm and he's able to turn like that. The go-behind man reaches for the far hip and he loses him every time.
Reacting effectively to an opponent's offense can put you in great scoring position and may even lead to a fall.
With a good stance off an opponent's shot, a whip over can be a very common move, especially off a double leg. The whip over will end in a fall or in back points, which is ideal in wrestling. A common mistake in shooting is to miss the shot and reach up, and because of that, you can get whipped over. The correct way to do it is for this man to make the shot, instead of reaching up, is to keep his arm down and circle out.
Sprawling and clearing an opponent's hands is a good defensive maneuver. Here we use a drill that is exactly for this purpose. Sprawling and clearing his hands and then incorporating the go-behind.
Important principle here is to make sure that you sprawl far enough before you go behind, otherwise you can get yourself in trouble. Common error in the go behind is to forgetting to clear this hand. he needed to come back, clear the hand off before he went around the go behind. A real important essential on go behinds is to not stop out front and tie up and then go behind. It's more important to hit an angle off an opponent's shot. However, sometimes you do have to stop out front, and then you need to pushing in, snapping the head, pulling the power arm, and rotating around is very important. Bouncing the head off the mat to get the angle to get the go behind. Pushing in and elongating the opponent is very important. At the same time, keeping the weight on the arm that you're going around behind. This is an offensive partner shooting drill where this man's going to be getting the go behind, this man's going to be attacking the legs. He'll be lowering his level, keeping his head, his hand, and his shoulders down to make sure that doesn't allow this guy to penetrate to his legs. A real key thing on this is not getting into his legs, lowering his head and shoulders, and also keeping weight on the same side that he's going around until he's around behind. Good. Counter to a front headlock, simply to go to a 2-on-1, especially when this is done on the feet. Circling in to him. Another good counter to the front headlock is a quick duck before he gets the headlock tight. Both the 2-on-1 and the duck work only right off the initial front headlock.
Committing one's hips to almost a back arch is very important in this duck under.
Once the front headlock gets tight, grabbing the elbow and pushing in, bending the knees will release the pressure.
An essential position to learn is clearing front headlocks from the knees. This is a very common position that everyone gets in when you do leg attacks. Clearing your opponent off your head by driving into them is necessary. Grabbing an elbow and sliding your head out aids the process. A short drag action, besides just driving into your opponent, is another term that's commonly used here. Dragging that arm by, getting an angle. Duck unders are also used from the knees as well as from the feet. Anytime you do a duck from the knees, it almost looks like a leg attack. Just a little action there creates an opening to score. Not letting your opponent solidify that tie-up position is real critical to making sure that the maneuver works. The body lock duck drill is a great drill that you use to help yourself after you missed a shot. It puts you in a position of scoring, and with good action, you can knock your opponent off of you and gives you an opportunity to actually come up around and score. You can see it takes a lot of effort by the bottom man. A good double leg requires penetration and driving. It also requires sometimes cutting corners.
Bill hit a good driving leg tackle. He's going to show 4 setups and 4 finishes.
but I'd like to see that good driving leg tackle one more time. On the driving leg tackle, we're going to emphasize 4 good setups. First one is body faking, and he hits the move. Second one is the elbow post, we're emphasizing, and then he hits the move. Collar and inside tie snap, then he hits the move. And lastly, the underhook, elbow post, and hits the move.
The fakes get your opponent to react. The elbow post clears your opponent's arms, leading for a good double leg shot. This tie will clear the opponent's head out of position to give you a good chance to penetrate. The underhook and the far side elbow post creates nothing but legs.
Finishes on the double leg tackle. First one is the standard head to one side, leg on the other. An important point is to make sure that you stay low and cover across the far side. Second one is lifting your opponent into the air and circling him down. An important point here is to get a swing in your action, up and down. Third finish is twisting him to his rear with the shoulder in. Making sure you cover the hips. And lastly, when the opponent sprawls, you have a slide by. Real quick action.
Here we use the head and far side leg trap. Here we use the lift, and of course we control our opponent to the mat. Here we get in and we twist our opponent. And here we get caught, so we slide by.
On the double jolt drill, a good drill for double legs and leg penetrations, when the opponent reaches for the shoulders, you come in and jolt in every time. Opponent reaches in, straight arm.
This jolt drill gives us the opportunity to know we are penetrating.
Sometimes in drilling situations, it's wise to use a landing pad to save wear and tear on people's bodies, especially when you're lifting and driving in a sport like wrestling.
Lowering one's level and penetrating puts you in a position of high single legs.
This is the standard high single leg position. Just reaching in, coming up with a single leg. Staying on the feet, high single leg. From the high single position, we have several important finishes. The first is the head drive finish. It's important to penetrate with the hips under on this head drive finish. The second is the far knee barzagar finish, named after a famous Iranian champion. The hips under, shoulders under, and snatching that far knee as he goes to the mat. The third finish is the low ankle lift finish. You reach down and trip the far ankle. The low ankle lift finish. The fourth is the far knee behind finish. Circling behind, driving the two knees together.
This is a very good execution near the edge of the mat. And lastly is the lift finish off the high single, where you pick in, roll the opponent down. Hips under, very important, hips under.
Staying in a good squat finish is important on the head drive for power. It's also important for picking the far knee. Quickness is important in the low single leg as well as a kick. Cutting the corner from behind and trapping the far knee on this finish. And lifting and controlling your opponent to the mat is also critical.
A very important drill on the high single finish is the in-out drill, where you bring the knee from the inside to the outside, from the outside to the inside, back and forth. Knee positions will determine where you take your opponent. A variation of the head to the inside high single finish is when the opponent takes the head to the outside and he drives him and dumps him. It's the same type of penetration move as a double leg.
When your opponent pushes your head to the outside, you must stay very tight to make sure that he doesn't cut the corner on you. Corner cutting helps with the finishes of takedowns. Here it makes it easy.
We're going to do corner cutting drills that are good for leg tackle finishes. Here we're doing the head to the inside corner cutting drill. An important point here is making sure when you come around behind you pick the ankle up. We also do this drill down on the mat with the head to the outside, cutting the corner, sweeping around, picking up that ankle again. Making sure one's head does not hit the mat and stay down to the mat. Getting away from the opponent's weight is really essential on these corner cutting drills. Corner cutting drills can also be done from the feet to get away from the opponent's weight to make sure you can go to your finishes. Here Bill is finishing from the head to the inside while he's on his feet, coming around. At the same time, he can do it with the head to the outside. Comes around, stays close to the opponent's far knee, and at the same time comes around in a squat position, staying away from the opponent's weight. Corner cutting from head to the outside on the knees to the feet is actually ideal. What it does is it puts you in a good position to penetrate and to finish the move even better than staying on the knees.
Here, Lincoln McElravy cuts the corner, lifts and finishes. Here, Olympic champion Tom Brands uses a sweep single and gets caught, but he uses a limp arm finish to get the takedown.
This is the initial position on a sweep single. Something that you wouldn't do, you would add the finishes. And the finishes that we need to add are the far knee finish from behind. You need to sweep, drop your shoulder, come around, pick the ankle up and go to the far knee. Another sweep single finish would be lift and finish. No hesitation, lift and drive. A head drive finish, getting the weight off, coming around would be another finish. When the opponent puts a lot of weight on your near side, you dump him that way. And a sweep single finish off the low sweep single would be a limp arm. The opponent's going to a whizzer, actually throw that whizzer in there, and he limps that arm out and comes up for the takedown.
Pivoting all the way around behind to be able to trap that far knee is critical. Clearing your head on this sweep single involves lifting your opponent's leg off your head. Getting caught and coming across and head driving knocks your opponent down. And of course, anytime there's whizzer action, you must limp that arm out to get the takedown.
A good drill off the sweep single is a lift drill, where Bill here picks up Mark with his head in between the legs, swings high with the shoulder there, and at the same time keeps his hips under. This clears Mark every time. No hesitation on this move. Bill's demonstrating a head to the outside shot. Come back one more time. It's really a kind of a difficult move for a lot of people to learn, but when you add the finish, it's fine. The finish should be cutting the corner, like we learned earlier, coming around at the far knees. One more time. Head to the outside, come around, cut the corner. Another finish would be a lift finish. Actually, Bill won a national title on this move right there. In the national finals, he hit in. Let's do it from the feet. You can see the whole move. Head to the outside shot, pop in, lift, switch off. You can also do a head to the outside shot, set the opponent on his rear end, and cover across. One more time.
On this head to the outside finish, coming around and trapping the far knee brings your opponent to the mat. On this head to the outside lift, you clear your opponent off your shoulders. And on this one, you want to make sure that your head doesn't hit the mat and comes across to the far hip.
Bill's executing the standard low single technique. Basically, you could call this the John Smith technique. He's going to do a cut across single leg for a finish. We'll do that again. Low single leg, cut across. And he'll also do the low single lift. One more time.
Catching the heel is a must.
John Smith has developed this low single so well that we have to develop defenses for this particular move. We have a drill that we use here, a go-behind drill when a man goes for our low single. We incorporated that earlier. We also have a move when he gets in on us, we peel the hand, incorporate our go-behind, and we also just go for a stalemate when he has it too tight.
The near arm far leg works especially well off the inside tie.
This next move is a variation of a leg tackle. It's called a near arm far leg. It's a move that myself, Tom Brands used a lot in the Olympic Games and in our entire career. Near arm far leg takes the opponent right to his back. Another variation would be when the opponent pulls his arm out, he sweeps singles. It's a variation that when you lose the arm, the near arm, you just go to a sweep single and your far knee finish. And the last variation would be a fake at the knee and head snap, where the opponent reacts a little bit, snaps and goes behind.
The best outcome of the near arm far leg is taking your opponent right to his back. If the arm slips, you end up in a sweep single and a far knee finish. Getting your opponent to react results in a snap down off the near arm far leg.
Pinning can happen in standing wrestling. A lot of it happens through tosses. And tosses are moves that usually happen because we do a backstep drill. This backstep drill will teach good hip positions, at the same time put your opponent towards his back. Now we incorporate an actual toss after we've learned the backstep drill. Bill will hit an arm toss off this backstep drill.
Now we'll do an alternative to this back step drill would be both athletes throw each other one at a time. What makes this work is an opponent pushing into his partner. An essential from this hip drill is the hip toss. The opponent ends directly on his back and hopefully in a fall position. Another essential is the headlock. Opponent pushing in, very similar. Staying perpendicular as you land is real critical. Both of these moves were set up through the back step drill.
Swinging your opponent behind you and having low hips helps on the hip toss and as well on the headlock. Deep penetration and back arch helps with the duck under.
And now we'll show some additional moves from the standing position. The first one is the high crotch. It's almost similar to a duck under when he comes around off the elbow. The second one is a duck under. He peels the hand off the head. At the second time he comes up, he comes around. Peels the hand off the head, ducks, comes around. An arm drag is the next move. Simply pulling the opponent to the mat, coming around, swiveling at the hips. Fireman's carry. In and dump, clearing the head is very important. Often, young people get their head caught and then they fail to score. And lastly, ankle picks. That's a pop ankle pick, and moving and picking the ankle is another good technique.
The high crotch is a combination of a duck and leg attack. Setting up a duck under requires removing your opponent's hand. An arm drag can toss your opponent to the mat. Clearing the head on the fireman's carry makes for an easy finish. Banging the head on the ankle pick helps the entire move.
You've just seen the essentials of standing wrestling. In this video, they were demonstrated in near-perfect form by two great wrestlers. Leg attacks and go-behinds are key skills for success on the feet. Work to perfect these moves and you'll come out on top.
To order any or all three of the videos in Dan Geibl's Wrestling Essentials series, or for information on wrestling books like Coaching Wrestling Successfully by Dan Geible, contact Human Kinetics.